We are going to begin, as always, with a round of Museum of Everything Pub Trivia. So, Josh, what is your first question to me, please?
Name 4 F Scott Fitzgerald novels.
Okay. Tender as a Night and The Great Gatsby are actually all the F. Scott Fitzgerald novels that I know. I don't think I've read any others.
What, you've never read The Love of the Last Tycoon?
Oh, yeah, I have actually, now that you mention it.
And you never read This Side of Paradise?
No, I've not read This Side of Paradise.
You have heard of it.
I have, but I don't like F. Scott Fitzgerald very much. I'm sorry to say.
Really?
I should probably reread him. Yes, I've never really been in his camp.
Interesting.
Yes.
Do you prefer Hemingway to Fitzgerald?
Vastly.
No, that's surprising. I definitely prefer Fitzgerald to Hemingway.
Why is that?
A little. I find his writing to be a little less self-consciously stylistic.
Well, that was only late Hemingway. Early Hemingway wasn't stylistically self-conscious at all.
That may be true, and I haven't read any of his early stuff in quite a while. The last thing of Hemingway's I read was A Movable Feast, and it was so irritating. It sort of turned me off Hemingway. I should really go back and give him another chance.
Not really fair. That was one of his very last things.
Yeah,
I haven't find it tremendously entertaining, but it's true. It's Hemingway once he'd maxed out in the self-conscious trying to sound like Hemingway scale. F. Scott Fitzgerald, in my mind, has suffered from the overpopularity of The Great Gatsby. And I just haven't read Tender as a Night in a long time. I probably am not being fair to him.
The Last Tycoon, The Love of the Last Tycoon is my favorite of his novels, even though it's unfinished. And it's not really unfinished in a meaningful way, because the plot doesn't really matter. But it's a beautiful novel. I find him a superb writer, and I think he writes as he wants to without bothering to aim for some particular target of stylistic genius the way Hemingway does. But you're right that I should give Hemingway's early stuff another chance. Which, The Sun Also Rises. That's the Blood in the Afternoon. I did enjoy that a lot.
The Sun Also Rises is a greater novel.
Right, but
probably.
I was thinking of the bullfighting novel, the one with sort of the coda about Sidney Franklin, which is
yes. No, A Movable Feast is stylistically a little obnoxious at times, but it still contains many hugely entertaining anecdotes.
The thing is that it claims that he's using things that he wrote when he was young, which is obviously not true. But it sort of confuses you about his periods.
No, I think it just incorporates stories or anecdotes from when he was young. I don't think he's claiming that he's recycling things that he wrote when he was young verbatim. It doesn't really matter. I will give Fitzgerald another chance. You don't happen to have a copy of Tender as the Night on you by any chance?
I think I do, actually. It's not here. It's in my car, in my big bag of books.
Okay, well,
which
maybe
every car should have.
If you could bring that over afterwards, I will read it again. I don't know why it didn't grab me the first time, but it didn't. So
it's as you say, it's probably your sort of understandable antipathy towards The Great Gatsby because everyone else loves it so much. So The Great Gatsby is an absolutely wonderful novel, but there's a good reason it's popular. As you pointed out many times in our private conversations and maybe on the podcast, everyone loves it because it's the only serious book they're required to read in school. But everyone also loves it because it's an absolutely brilliant novel. I know it's easy to sort of take a turn against things because they're very popular and sort of the natural instinctive thing to do. But, the Beatles legitimately are the best band. It's not just because everyone likes them.
Now that we're publishing daily reels to Instagram, some of which are getting hundreds of thousands and even millions of views occasionally.
Yeah, you had one last week that's about to hit 3 million views.
Well, I've been checking out reels on Instagram more often than I should, which has not improved my life. And I recently saw...
on the contrary, everyone should use Instagram all the time.
You're right. But I saw this channel where a young lady, as it were, is summarizing various plots semi in costume, and she did one for The Great Gatsby, and I found not only did I find it rather hard to watch, but it reminded me of everything that I disliked about the popular approach to The Great Gatsby, I guess, which is English teachers, I think, latch onto symbolism because it's the only thing
Yeah.
that they can, because when you don't understand art, it's easy. Symbolism is an easy way to pretend that you do.
I can see symbolism even when it isn't there.
Exactly. Same thing in painting, by the way, or in any art. If you discuss things in terms of symbolism, it relieves you of the burden of having to actually appreciate the art for itself. I don't think that F. Scott Fitzgerald would have loved the attempt to cast everything in his novel into
and that's the reason that I like Fitzgerald more than Hemingway, because I feel like Hemingway is trying to write art and Fitzgerald is just trying to write a really good novel. You know what I mean?
But did he succeed? I don't know.
Yeah, and he definitely succeeded.
I'm not ready to reread The Great Gatsby. I'm sorry. But I will reread Tender is the Night and perhaps The Last Tycoon as well. So after our
I would start with
discussion-
The Last Tycoon, actually.
Why?
It's my favorite.
Okay. In any event, I missed that first question. So
I think that's maybe the first time you've missed the first question.
Perhaps. It's a sad beginning then. I will put the first question to you, which is, in Bizet's opera Carmen, which you absolutely love.
It's true.
Carmen seduces Don Jose, the hero who is also a guard or the member of the local military establishment, by promising that if he lets her escape, he will have to take the hit for it and get arrested himself for his incompetence. After he gets out, he is going to meet her where?
Près de rempart de Séville, chez mon ami Las Pastia.
Yes, that is correct.
Above the ramparts of Seville, at the bar of her friend Las Pastia, which is a meeting place for snuggles, snuggles, smuggles, not snugglers, for smugglers. It is a meeting place for smugglers.
For smugglers,
the country.
Which leads on to one of the most thrilling songs in the opera, where everyone is dancing at Lilas Pastia. And the tempo keeps increasing. It's a really thrilling song.
A frenetic. It's like someone is having a moment of mania.
It's a frenzied moment. It's extremely exciting. The whole opera is extremely exciting, and it's one of my favorites. One of our favorites.
I'm constantly going back and forth on what my favorite opera is. Is it The Marriage of Figaro or Carmen? And some of Mozart's other operas are often considered The Magic Flute, Così fan tutte, Don Giovanni, but it always comes down to The Marriage of Figaro and Carmen, and it's just whichever one I've listened to most recently.
For me, Don Giovanni is by far my favorite opera.
I love Don Giovanni. I think that Don Giovanni's high moments are as good as the best moments in either Carmen or Figaro, but Carmen and Figaro really don't drop from their peaks. They're so strong from the opening number to the last.
You don't find the second half of The Marriage of Figaro drags a little bit?
No, I think some of the best arias in the show are in the second half, particularly the one sung by the Count's wife. The slow number where she sort of reflects on her.
Basically the sole highlight until the
but
end.
it's one of Mozart's greatest arias. It's
but the rest of the material, I think, in the second half is considerably weaker. I think that he should have edited that a little bit. Anyway,
I disagree. I never tire of The Marriage of Figaro. Though it's the Carmen has the advantage, I think, of being, maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I think it's considerably tighter and shorter. It just sort of snaps from one moment to the next.
Yes, Carmen is a very great opera. It's so different as an opera from Mozart's great operas that it's almost a separate musical form, I would say. Just like Gilbert and Sullivan, which we both love, is almost a different musical form. True. And by the way, I'm tired of people calling Gilbert and Sullivan just operetta as though to pretend that it's not serious music.
It's absurd because after the operas I named by Mozart and then Carmen, I think the most beautiful operas, not from a comedy point of view or a clever dialogue kind, strictly from a musical point of view, are Gilbert and Sullivan's. I like them better than Puccini. I like them better than Verdi. I like them better than Fidelio.
By and large, I agree. And the fact is that there's a lot of beautiful music in them, and it's not as though the great Italian or Mozart's operas were not allowed to be funny and buffoonish, because in many respects they are explicitly. And you could say that Gilbert and Sullivan are following that tradition better than other serious opera.
American and English opera critics can understand the jokes in Gilbert and Sullivan, and they don't understand the jokes in the operas in German and Italian and French, not in the same way anyways. So it's they see them as being more serious. I think that may have something to do with it.
I think it's a case of pretentiousness, largely.
Yeah, and also in terms of lyrics, in Gilbert and Sullivan, the lyrics scan, which they do not do in either Mozart or Bizet. Not even close. The singers really have to stretch the words. And so it's something to bear in mind in terms of successful art creation. Actually having lyrics that scan makes it seem a little more poppy, perhaps, but is
Well, I this is
not
nothing
something
against
you can
Mozart.
take
I
against it.
certainly love Mozart operas, most of them at least. Verdi, Puccini, they have some good moments. They tend to be a little bit overwrought and histrionic, as the Italians can be at times. Anyway,
I listened to Turandot recently. I like that. Or
did you?
Turandot. There seems to
Anyway,
be some debate as to how it's pronounced.
next
I've never
question
seen
to
it
me,
in person.
please.
All right. Name 8 Gershwin musicals.
Oh,
And
all right.
These can be Broadway shows or movies.
There are a lot of name multiples in your questions these days, which I think is a bad habit you've inherited from me in my early pub trivia sessions. But I
think these are
press
good
ahead
questions.
anyway. Okay.
I was going to do 10, but 10 would be kind of pushing it a little bit, so 8 is where we've landed.
I can think of the songs, obviously, but I'm not sure what shows they come from. Strike Up the Band.
Okay, that's one.
No, that's two.
That's 2. But that is a correct one. I am stunned that you are not knocking this out of the park, I have to say.
Yeah.
Our listeners may not know how big a Gershwin enthusiast you are. I am essentially the biggest Gershwin enthusiast in the world, and you are even a greater enthusiast than me. So,
Shall We Dance?
Okay.
Of Thee I Sing.
That's 4. Come on, Dan.
Funny Face.
Yep, that's 5. Only 3 more.
I don't know. I'm out of them for the moment. I mean, where did Kickin' the Clouds Away and so forth? Those earlier songs that I'm thinking of, I just can't think of the shows that they went into. I mean, unless you can't count Porgy and Bess, I suppose.
I'll count Porgy and Bess. That's 6. You only need 2 more if you want to keep going.
Lady Be Good.
Yep, that's 7.
But I think you gave that away.
Well, I mean, if you didn't know the show, you wouldn't have known what I was humming. So I think I'm going to count that.
And Let 'Em Eat Cake.
Okay, that's 8. Good work. It was like pulling teeth, but we got there. You left out Damsel in Distress.
Was that a Broadway show?
No, you include, like, Shall We Dance? It was a movie, but I said you could include movies.
Oh.
I mean,
for some reason I wasn't thinking of movies, but I mean, Shall We Dance? But
all right, well, you got there in the end.
What else did I miss?
So there was Tiptoes, Rosalie, Treasure Girl, Showgirl, Girl Crazy, Of Thee I Sing, Pardon My English, Let 'Em Eat Cake, and I think you named the other ones.
Girl Crazy is the only one of those that I really just forgot. The other ones are
well,
very
we
obscure.
Saw Let 'Em Eat Cake. We saw Let 'Em Eat Cake.
I named Let 'Em Eat Cake also.
Okay. So anyways, you got most of them.
I would say that,
and Rosalie, I know you've listened to the overture many times.
I have, but they are relatively more obscure shows. Nonetheless,
that's why I didn't do 10. Obviously,
I got that one. Thanks.
Numbers, but...
my second question to you is: on Christmas night of 1776, when Washington crossed the Delaware, it was to attack what force in what battle?
All right, the force he was attacking were the British Army.
Well, no, I'm actually not.
The Hessians?
That's correct. He was attacking the Hessians, who were the German mercenary force hired by the British to sort of extend and expand their own army.
What battle was it?
It is a battle named after the town, the nearest town to his crossing point on the far side of the river. And he was crossing from the Pennsylvania side of the Delaware.
The Battle of Trenton?
That's correct. It was the Battle of Trenton. Very good.
I mean, that it required a few hints, but I'll take it.
We'll give that to you as 2 to you. You have a third question to me?
I do. What was the nickname of VMF 214, a Marine fighter squadron?
The Black Sheep Squadron.
Very good.
Okay. Yeah, that's the only Marine Corps fighter squadron from the Second World War we'd be likely to know. Fighter squadrons in general are designated VF. The F is for fighter. V is the designation they gave for heavier than air squadrons, because at the time the military had lighter than air as well. And the M, of course, is for the Marine Corps. So VMF 214, that was Pappy Boington's Black Sheep Squadron.
For an honorary bonus question, what was the name of the island on which they were primarily based? It was not Vela La Cava.
Was it Vela La Vela?
Yes, it was Vella Lavella. They changed that for the TV show, The Black Sheep Squadron, because they thought people would think the name Vella Lavella was silly. So they made up Vella La Cava.
Well, that wasn't a bad made-up name, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, it's a fine
And
name.
though the TV show is wildly historically inaccurate, it was a fun show, and we both enjoyed it as
Yeah,
kids.
there are a lot of things in the show that I assumed were inaccurate, but did actually come from Boyington's memoir. For instance, the name of the colonel he didn't like was Colonel Lard. I don't assume. I know he made that up for the thing, but I thought they made it up for the TV show, which was kind of infantile. But since it came from the book, it makes it a little less infantile.
You remember the name of the actor who plays Bowington in the show?
I don't.
I do recall his saying that they had Bowington as a consultant on the show, and that Bowington told him that he wished that he had been in the Black Sheep Squadron so he could have beat the crap out of him because he was such an arrogant son of a bitch.
Yeah, something like that.
In any event, all right, fair enough. That gives me 2 out of 3. You can win it by answering this question correctly, since you already have 2 out of 2. And the question is, if you don't count the Croton Aqueduct from 1848, what is the oldest bridge to Manhattan?
Is it the Brooklyn Bridge?
It is the Brooklyn Bridge, which was completed in 1883 and was the first sort of semi-modern suspension bridge, at least the first suspension bridge to use metal cables instead of the iron ties that we associate with industrial-era bridges.
You really would have thought there would be an older one over the East River.
Yes.
Which is much smaller. I mean, not the Harlem River.
Oh, you mean, well, there probably
there was really
were
no one
bridges.
living up there until reasonably recently. I mean, Manhattan was developed from the Battery northward, so it didn't reach the top of the island in relative terms for quite a while.
I think there were earlier bridges that were temporary or wood or, that haven't survived. But in any event, the oldest still surviving and usable bridge is the Brooklyn Bridge. We don't count the Croton Aqueduct, although it still exists, because it wasn't built for passenger or even foot traffic, although now people can walk across it. It was built as an aqueduct. So in any event, Brooklyn Bridge is pretty magnificent engineering, and there's something that is effortlessly modern about it, even though it was built such a very long time ago. In any event, we don't have to go to extra questions today, because you cleanly win that round of Museum of Everything Pub Trivia.
I'm afraid you've let yourself down, Dan.
Yeah, all right.
It's a shame, because I had some good extra innings questions, but I guess I'll save them for next time.